Hi everyone, it is so wonderful to see you and to spend time with you. My name is Katerina Stojkova. I am the founder and senior editor of Accents Publishing. We are an independent press based in Lexington, Kentucky. Periodically, we bring you an author of a book published by Accents and focus on this author and that book for an hour. A few books we featured recently are Frank X. Walker's Masked Man Black, Pandemic and Protest Poems, The Compost Reader by Karen Schubert, and Lock Her Up by Tina Parker. All these are poetry books. We are in our 12th year and we have released over 80 poetry collections. Now, in 2019, we decided to do a worldwide contest in search of the best unpublished novella in English. Out of all submissions, we fell in love with a spunky, fearless, authentic manuscript titled Homegoing. We loved the voice, the dialogue, the issues the manuscript brought up and examined, the emotional range and complexity. We loved the interactions and the relationships between the characters. For all these reasons, Homegoing won our inaugural novella contest. But then I met the author, Toni Ann Johnson, the gracious, talented, generous person who works hard, is totally dedicated to her craft, stands up for what she believes in, and spares no effort to give the best of herself. It's been an honor to read Toni Ann Johnson's book, to work with this remarkable author, and to bring to you this beautiful little book, Homegoing. Beautiful in any and all ways a book can be beautiful. Just as important, the author does not shy away from difficult topics. Aya de Leon, author of A Spy in the Struggle, says the following: Toni Ann Johnson's novella Homegoing is the perfect story for this moment in history. Colette Sartre, author of Once Removed, winner of the Flannery O'Connor Award for short fiction, says the following: in her novella, Homegoing, Toni Ann Johnson examines issues of race, racism, forgiveness, and family. Her prose is luminous, yet wickedly funny, an enviable combination, and her characters searingly flawed. Homegoing is that rare, wondrous literary achievement. It makes you laugh, even as it breaks your heart. I support these endorsements and can't wait to hear Toni Ann read from her new book. After the reading, we'll have an opportunity to ask questions. Now, please help me welcome the author of Homegoing, Toni Ann Johnson.
Thank you, guys. Thank you so much for coming. It's so amazing to see all these people that I know and love and appreciate. And it really means a lot to me that you're here. Thank you. Where'd you go, Katerina? Okay, she's gone. So I guess I will read. I'm going to read.
It is your turn, yes.
Okay. I'm going to read from the top of the book, and I'll try to explain where we are as I'll read a few sections. So this is the opening. We're in 2006, New York, 2006. Hi, Maddie. How are you? It's snowing up here. Can you believe it? Jesus, I hope it doesn't stick. How's the weather where you are? Oh, I'm glad you called. Listen, I got something to tell you. Remember Mr. Farrell from down the hill? Bought that Civil War saber from me. Remember? You there? Yeah, Maddie said. Well, why don't you say something? Because you don't. Listen, he died. This was typical. As her mother aged, she barely let Maddie part her lips, and she was obsessed with the obits. She read them daily. compulsively. Even casual acquaintances knew that if you bumped into Velma at the Stop and Shop, you were in for an updated litany of the dearly departed locals. Maddie was wearing pajamas in the middle of the day. She was curled up like a fist on the floor beside her upright piano. She couldn't say she was moved by Farrell's passing. The man had never been nice to her. His kids hurled rocks and racial epithets when they were growing up. She hadn't seen him since the mid-'80s, 20 years ago, and he looked old then. Nonetheless, she exhaled and said, "That's too bad, Mom." "Yeah, so sad. All my contemporaries are either going, or gone." Velma chuckled at the auction quip that made regular appearances in her "you'll never guess who died" routines. "Rolando's moving back to LA," Maddie told her. "He doesn't want to be married anymore." "Oh," Velma said, "sorry to hear that." Then her voice brightened to a higher key. "Well, so you'll be single, so what? I've been single for over 25 years now, and I love it. I'm glad I don't have to deal with your father's bullshit anymore. You seen him lately? Jesus, he looks old, like an antique, a relic, like I could sell his ass in my shop." No matter the content of the conversation, if her mother was participating, its focus would be on her. Velma went on complaining as Maddie set the phone down and climbed off the floor. She shuffled in her fleece and corduroy slippers, hunched against the cramping in her abdomen. With the bathroom door open, she peed with the light off and stared out the doorway so she wouldn't have to see her lady parts cry blood. Across the room, boxes were stacked like giant bricks, making a wall along the windows: a stroller, a breast pump, an infant tub. She closed her eyes and blindly replaced the pad with a fresh one. When she made it back to the phone, Velma was still monologuing. "And you know, he was so damn cheap, honestly. When I wasn't working after I had you, he'd give me a few dollars spending money, and then he'd make me go buy him cigarettes and scotch with it. What an SOB. Finally, she asked, "So what happened anyway? Why doesn't Ro want to be married anymore? Another woman?" He said, "You know, just because you make more money doesn't mean you should always be the boss. Rolando told me you control everything, and you do. You get that from your father." Ouch. Why did she always hope her mother would be different? She wanted to say, "Fuck you." Instead, she bit her tongue. She bit the crap out of it. She'd need stitches if she bit it any harder. "You there?" Velma asked. "I'm hanging up now." "Oh, you don't want to talk, huh? Well, all right then, you'll be fine." For a moment, Maddie imagined her mother sounding caring, the way one might encourage a toddler to come down a slide. "It's okay, you'll be fine." "Really?" she sniffled. "How do you know, Mommy?" "Because what choice do you have, Maddie? Life goes on. Until it doesn't, and you read about it in the paper." So after this, Maddie's husband moves out, and the day that he's moving out, the TV is on, and the actor from Seinfeld, Michael Richards, has gone off on a racist rant in LA the night before, and it's on every channel, and it's quite harsh, and he uses the N-word, and Maddie is triggered by it, and hearing that and the harshness of it reminds her a bit of her own childhood. And so she recalls some of the people who traumatized her as a kid with their racism. And all these things, and she's also had a miscarriage. All these things have weighed on her, and she's kind of shut down and slept for about a week. She hasn't been answering the phone. So that's what's preceded this next scene I'm going to read. Days later, the doorbell rang, waking her. The blinds were closed, electronics unplugged, and it was black hole dark in the apartment. "Maddie?" It was her mother's voice. She pounded on the door. Thud, thud, thud. "Are you in there?" She stood and then tottered. The room was a swaying boat. "Oh my God," Velma said when Maddie opened the door. "You look half dead." Velma stood there in her long black mink. Her dark eyes winced and then welled to a sheen. "Jesus." She hugged Maddie tight. Maddie was not a fur fan. She donated to PETA, but the cool softness of Velma's coat was silky and soothing as she nuzzled her cheek in it. Velma's frame seemed smaller, more delicate than it had a couple of months earlier. Maddie thought she might break her if she squeezed too hard. "My baby," Velma said, "it's just a man." She moved inside, set her coach bag and tote on the entry table, and then she tugged Maddie into the room by her hand. "Get out of those pajamas, I'm running you a bath." Her heels clicked onto the hexagon tiles as she stepped into the bathroom. Maddie heard the water flow. Velma stepped back out. "I said, get out of those filthy pajamas. Maddie, you smell like a bag lady. How long have you been like this?" Maddie lifted and dropped her shoulders. Velma put her hands on Maddie's cheeks and looked at her, mouth agape, horrified. She felt her forehead. Velma's bronze skin was barely wrinkled despite her age. The full face of makeup, foundation, powder, mascara, eyeliner, shadow, and lipstick was too much, but the beauty she'd once been hadn't faded much. Woozy, Maddie's right hand grabbed the piano for support. The left one grabbed the antique chest of drawers. Her wedding band clacked against the wood. "What are you doing here?" Velma opened the closet and slid Maddie's clothes aside to hang her coat. Maddie imagined sad little animals screaming from the hanger. "You haven't answered the phone all week," Velma said, pushing up the sleeves of her cashmere turtleneck. She gave the contents of the closet the once-over before she closed the door and turned to Maddie. "You were supposed to meet me at your grandparents' today. It's Thanksgiving." "My God, your face looks gaunt." "Thanks." "Pale, too. Have you eaten today?" Maddie shook her head. "There's food in my bag. Get in the tub. I'll fix you a plate." When her pajamas came off in the bathroom, Maddie thought the mirror would shriek if it could. Velma was right. Her face was gaunt. Her hair was a frightening mess, too. She hadn't noticed because she'd never turned the light on in the bathroom and she hadn't undressed. Her stomach wasn't back to flat yet, and her breasts were still engorged, but her face, arms, and thighs were thin like they hadn't been since she was a teenager trying to starve her backside off so it would look like the white girl she went to high school with. She'd barely eaten since Saturday when Rolando was there. She slept most of the previous day and couldn't remember eating at all. Ow! Her foot burned as it entered the tub. She eased the rest of her body down into the scalding water. The heat seemed to make her organs seize inside. Could she be cooking them? The pain was oddly pleasurable, interesting, maybe because she hadn't felt much of anything except numb for a while. Her mother marched into the bathroom and thrust a large glass of water at her. "Drink this," she said. "You're probably dehydrated." She hovered above Maddie and made sure she finished it. "I'm sorry you spent the day alone, honey," she said. "You'll come home for Christmas. Your grandparents are going to your cousin Susie's, and I don't feel like traveling way out to Connecticut." Maddie handed her the empty glass. "Thank you." Velma closed the top of the wooden toilet seat, sat and unzipped her black leather boots. She set them outside the open door and then cracked her toes. "What's with all the baby stuff?" she asked, eyeing the boxes by the windows across the room. There was a wild glint in her eyes when she whirled toward Maddie. "You're not pregnant, are you? He left you and you're pregnant?" She shook her head. "You must have really pissed him off." "I'm not. For 15 weeks, I was. Now I'm not." Velma's fully made up face froze for a moment with her mouth open. "And you didn't think to tell your mother?" "I planned on doing it today. Thanksgiving would have been 16 and a half weeks. Last time we miscarried at 12. I wanted to be sure." Velma huffed out a sigh. "You shouldn't have waited till middle age." She examined her bare nails. "I was 31 when I had you. That was considered old then, but I was a lot younger than you are. I didn't have any problems." "Do I not seem sufficiently miserable to you?" Velma's pencil-enhanced brows crinkled. "What? Telling me it's my fault and how you did it better is not comforting." "Oh, Jesus, you're so sensitive, Maddie. I didn't come all the way down here to be scolded." "May I have some privacy, please?" "For what? You don't have anything I don't have, and I didn't come all this way to sit by myself." "I'm still passing bits of blood and tissue. Could you please?" "Ew, why? Is that normal?" "What do you mean, why? What did I just tell you?" All right, all right." Velma stood. "Why are you yelling? Calm down." Maddie put on a black velour sweatsuit, twisted her hair to one side, and ate Thanksgiving leftovers at her round oak table with the chatty, shrinking lady who seemed intent on inducing her mental breakdown. Plate filled with collard greens, candied yams, Jamaican rice and peas, turkey with gravy, mac and cheese, and wholeberry cranberry sauce. It smelled sublime. her first real meal in days. "You've got too much furniture in here," her mother said, looking around. "But the chest of drawers does look good by the piano. I didn't think it would." Maddie spoke with her mouth full. "I'm glad you like it." Velma looked over her head to stare at it. She fingered the back of the walnut brown curls she had covered every few weeks at the one salon in the Monroe area that could do black hair. "But why don't you polish the drawer pulls? The brass is dull. You need to brighten them up." "They're bright enough for me," Maddie said. "That piece came from an old customer. If I hadn't seen her obituary, I wouldn't have known about the estate sale." Velma got up and padded over to the bureau in her stocking feet. She ran her fingers along its top, and then she leaned in to stare at the ultrasound photo taped on the wall above it. After a moment, she padded back and sat down. She looked at Maddie's plate. "Well, you haven't said anything. You like it?" "Everything's good." "You made the baked macaroni?" "Don't I always?" "Especially the baked macaroni. Delicious." "Good." As Maddie ate, she watched Velma turn and squint at the photo of her that Rolando left by itself on the wall. "Why don't you hang some art or something? These empty walls are depressing." "I have some prints in the shop I could give you." She turned back to Maddie. Maddie met her eyes and glared a moment before she said, "You have nothing to say about the ultrasound?" Velma leaned back in her chair and floated her palms open. "What's there to say? I was almost a grandmother, and now I'm not. I'm not going to feel sorry for myself. You don't get everything you want in life, but you make the best of it." Maddie rested her fork. "You think this is your loss?" She laughed, not because it was funny, but because it was so very Velma. "It's funny that I'll probably never have grandchildren." She crossed her arms across her chest. "No one to visit me for the holidays like all my friends have? Thanks." "Mom, you don't even like kids. And thanks for coming to check on me only to remind me how disappointing I am." "I never said that." "You're not a grandmother, so what? Did you get to be a mom? What's your point?" "Did I?" Velma fingered the corner of the placemat in front of her. "You don't get to make me feel guilty right now," Maddie said. "I wasn't trying to do that." She looked up and stared at Maddie's left hand. She gave a nod to the platinum wedding band. "Want me to sell that for you?" "You know what? I'm full." Maddie got up and carried her unfinished plate to the kitchen. Velma's eyes followed her. "You're not throwing that out, are you? Cover it up." "Would you stop?" "What? I don't want it to go to waste." "Oh, I meant to ask you. You used to watch Seinfeld, right?" "I never watched it because there were never any blacks on it. But did you see what that guy did? It was all over the news. Awful, wasn't it?" "Yeah, I saw." She covered her plate with aluminum foil. "He says he's not a racist. He apologized to Jesse Jackson and Al Sharpton. Sharpton refused to accept." Maddie trudged back to the table and slumped into her chair. "Of course he's a racist. What do you think about Sharpton not accepting the apology?" "Would you?" Maddie picked a piece of lint off her velour hoodie. "I don't know." Velma stared off at nothing discernible. "If I thought it was sincere, I might. If someone's willing to change, I think you should be willing to let them." "I'd sure love to hear apologies from all the people who called me the N-word in Monroe." "Oh, Maddie, all what people? You act like you lived through Jim Crow. It wasn't that bad." "Mom." She leaned closer until they were eye to eye. "I've traveled the country. I've traveled the globe, and the only place I've been called the N-word was in that red state territory you and Daddy called home. And it happened so many times I would have needed a fucking adding machine to keep count." "Stop exaggerating." "I'm not. And I was expected to shrug it off. People didn't apologize or lose their jobs or status back then. They relished saying it, and there were no consequences." "Well, you certainly didn't complain to me about people saying that to you all the time." "Because you didn't give a damn about what happened to me." "Well," Velma closed her eyes. She exhaled and her lip trembled. "I can see you don't want my company." She stood. "I tried to tell you when that neighborhood witch Sally Gore said it to me at the bus stop, and when that girl's father said it when we were in junior high when she asked if I could come to her house, and when one of the mothers said it at ballet. You never wanted to hear it." "I'm going to catch my bus. My little Bertold is by himself, and I should get home before he does his business in the house." She sniffled. Maddie rose and followed Velma as she plodded toward her boots that were sitting outside the bathroom door. In third grade, Rick Moore, A ferret-faced moron who'd known me since kindergarten finally figured out that I was Black, and he wanted to make sure everyone knew. Her mother stopped moving. Maddie spoke to her back. Every day when we lined up to go to lunch, I stood behind him. And each day he turned, and loud enough for the other kids to hear, he said, "You're a nigger." I was the only Black kid in the class, one of less than a handful in the whole school. And you think I don't know that? Velma turned. Who do you think put you in the school, Maddie? I'm not finished. It was a good school. Velma crossed her arms and eyed the bracelets on her wrists. For a few days in a row, I told Mrs. Keener what he said, and she kept him inside at recess. That meant she was stuck in the classroom too. By the fourth day, she growled at me in her mean pack-a-day voice, "Can't you just ignore it?" Maddie leaned close to her mother's face the way Mrs. Keener had leaned into hers. Velma stepped back. "Well, you should have told me. I would have gone up there and spoken to her, but you've got to put this stuff behind you." She might as well have slapped me. And Ferret Face kept it up. I tried to ignore it, then more kids started doing it. That bitch knew and she didn't do shit. Did it ever occur to you that I would have been better off being around more Black kids? Listen, I grew up with plenty of Black kids. She turned away to step into her boots. And let me tell you, they're every bit as mean as white kids. She zipped them up and then opened the closet door. I had to switch junior high schools because 3 girls came to my house and threatened to cut my face over some boy who thought I was pretty. Cousin Susie never got beat up and she lived around Black kids. Velma slipped her mink off the hanger and slid into it and faced Maddie. Well, your cousin Susie wasn't as pretty as I was. And you weren't the only one who had a hard time in Monroe. You had Jewish friends who got picked on. They had each other, Mom. They all went to Hebrew school at Monroe Temple. I didn't have anyone. That's ridiculous. You had friends in Monroe. You still have friends there. Don't you talk to Lisa all the time and Julia? I didn't have anyone who was like me. Oh, so what? I didn't have anyone who was like me growing up either. They made fun of Jamaicans, called us monkey chasers. I survived and so did you. Go get your bus. And Susie didn't have all the things you had, trips abroad, piano and voice lessons, tennis lessons, a swimming pool. You had more than most of those white kids you grew up with too. Bye, Mom. You turned out all right, she said. Are you serious? You said I looked half dead and smelled like a bag lady. But this'll pass. I was a wreck when your father left too. I wasn't making enough money. I was suicidal, homicidal too. And your Uncle Aubrey gave me a gun. Okay, the only thing that stopped me from killing your father was that I knew you'd never forgive me. And he's damn lucky too, because I was, Mom! Maddie opened the door. Go, take care of your mean little dog. Don't badmouth your little brother. Velma kissed Maddie's cheek. With her thumb, she wiped the lipstick she'd left there and then stepped into the threshold. If you get lonely, you can always come home. Maddie shuddered. A turkey-scented draft blew through the hallway. Being lonely is not so bad. She hugged her shoulders. Velma's eyes puddled. Why don't you come home for the weekend, Maddie? I have to work. Well, at least come for Christmas so we won't be by ourselves. I'll call you later. Maddie watched her mope down the hall until she turned for the elevator. And I'm going to stop there. Thank you guys for listening. I can't hear the claps. Unmute.
Yay, Toni Ann.
Yay.
Brilliant reading. Amazing.
Excellent.
Bravo.
Excellent.
Yay.
That was wonderful, Toni.
Wow.
They're so nice.
Beautiful delivery.
Absolutely
And so
wonderful.
well told.
Thank you so much. Oh God, I'm going to enjoy this book.
Thank you so
Can't
much
wait to
for
get my
being here,
hands
for
on it.
listening.
Thank you, Toni.
Thank
Thank
you.
you, Toni. That was great.
You were
Oh my God, I see more people I didn't see before. Hi, Sid. Hi, Kurt. Hi, Colette.
Hi, Toni.
Hi, Colette was one of the people whose reviews you read, Katerina. She
That's
read
right, yes.
your blurb before you came on.
Oh my God.
Congratulations,
I just
Toni.
love this book.
Yeah.
Very nice.
So
So,
again, thank you, Toni Ann, for this amazing reading. And now we have questions for you. I mean, I would let the audience ask a question. Feel free to unmute and ask your question. You can post it in the chat. And if in the unlikely scenario that nobody has a question, I have a few of my own.
Hey, Nicole.
Hi, Toni Ann.
Congratulations again. Homegoing is such a gem of a book. I love the characters and mother-daughter dynamic. I was really struck by the title Homegoing. And as I read, it took on a deeper relevance for me when I realized that Maddie was going to a funeral. Because Black folks say funerals are homegoing ceremonies. So was that intentional? Was the title intentional?
Absolutely. I always knew that there was going to be a funeral in the story, and so I call funerals homegoings because that's my culture. So yeah, that was intentional. But of course, she does go home to Monroe, so it's that also. But yeah, I definitely intended for the homegoing to have that other meaning. But I know that everybody doesn't know that Black people call funerals homegoing. So maybe Black people might understand that, and maybe white people don't, or some who are familiar with that will. But it's still part of the intent of the story. Yes.
Yeah, it was amazing, and the mention of repast, because that's also like a cultural signifier. And then Velma says, "Oh, they don't say that in Monroe; they say reception."
Right.
So, yeah.
In my memory, they did not call a funeral a repast.
Right.
I remember when that was on when Michael Jackson's funeral was aired, the commentators are saying, and now they're going to something called a repast. They didn't know what it was.
Yeah, that was awesome. Thank you.
And there is a question by Ina. Ina, please go ahead and ask your question.
Hi, Ina.
I did mute you though, so you may need to unmute yourself.
Unmute, Ina.
I'm trying.
Okay, there you go.
Okay, there you go.
Ina's my cousin.
Yeah, I'm loving it, girl. I love the accent. Okay, I didn't read the front end of it. I haven't read the book yet. Where did this take place?
It takes place in Monroe, New York, but I guess you're referring to Velma's accent. She's from New York.
Yeah, that's what I thought. I heard that, and I was like, listen to her. Congratulations, lady.
Thank you. Did you have another question?
No, I actually didn't. I heard the accent, and I said, gosh, she sounds like a Jewish mother in Brooklyn.
So my mother is actually biologically half Ashkenazi. I didn't know that until I was an adult, but she comes by her New York Jewish accent naturally and authentically.
Oh, okay. Yeah, well, I grew up in Crown Heights, where the temple is, to the East Coast, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so when I heard that, I felt like I was at home. That is awesome. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Ina. Kurt, did you have a question?
Yes, I did. First off, I just want to say how much I enjoyed. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay.
Now I lost you. You disappeared. Oh, now you popped up somewhere else. I see you now.
Yeah, it's crazy how my Zoom works. It looks better on my computer, but I can hear you on my phone and you can hear me. So I had to switch over. First, I just want to say how much I enjoyed the reading. I can't wait to read the book.
Thank you.
I'm so glad that I came to this Zoom presentation. So my question has to do with your experience as an actor and how that informed your talents as a writer. And as I listened to you read, and the writing gave the characters such distinct voices, and your performance, see, already I'm seeing it as two separate people. Your performance did a great job of delineating the voices. I wonder how often, if ever, you improvise in your room while you're writing and have the characters talk out loud as you play the parts, or do you hear the voices almost exclusively in the writing? And which informs the other?
It's always out loud, and most of what I write, I am already thinking about reading it. So the rhythm of the way that the people speak is really important to me. So I try to make sure that if I have to read it, I can say it like the character. But I'm always improvising dialogue, and I read everything out loud pretty much. even the passages that are not dialogue, I read those out loud as well, just to make sure that they sound right to my ear. And sometimes when people edit me and then I read the edited, I'm like, ah, because I have a thing that just like where I hear it a certain way, and I don't really like it to be changed. But one of my acting classmates is here, two of them, Michael Mastro and Doug Siegel, and Doug was an actor and became a writer too, so I'm sure he probably does the same thing. Do you, Doug? Do you read, or like when you do your writing, do you act your characters out a little bit?
Well, first, let me say how great it is as somebody who went to acting school with Toni. She has aged far better than I. And I mean, the details in the writing are so great. You can see it as we're listening to it, which is I love that. I mean, it's acted and it's directed as you're writing it, which is great. To answer your question, yes, I do. I do
fantastic.
read. I read out loud a lot, but what I really related to, because as a writer, when I'm edited as well, it's the same thing that I've experienced. It's like, no, if you take that word out, it completely changes the rhythm, or it completely
yes, thank you.
And it's frustrating because a lot of editors are just sort of, their thing is, let's be economical with words, and I get it, but sometimes writing is music, and when you mess with, it's like removing a note from a passage.
Exactly.
Suddenly doesn't
and
sound.
You're a musician and you write music too, so you understand that even more. But I agree. I think you're exactly right. It is like music sometimes. I mean, at least to us. Everybody might not agree all the time. I know sometimes editors don't agree. They're just these indulgent writers.
I want to co-sign what Doug said, though, and what you said, because that was one of the words I was going to use. That it sort of goes down easy because it plays to my ear like music, your writing. And I'm not as far along as you guys are, but I write as well. And I understand that sometimes even a melody of the next line, the tempo and the meter of it can come before the words. And when I hear your writing, I hear the music, and I hear the balance of those things. And so I totally get what you're saying. So it's there.
Did you used to act too, Kurt?
Yes.
Okay, so yeah, so do you do that? Do you improvise, do you do the voices out loud?
I do sometimes, particularly if I'm doing a voice that's a little bit, that's different from mine. I particularly enjoy it. I mean, I wrote a project that was set on Long Island where I grew up, but as I tell, most people, like most Black folks don't have Long Island accents. We have variations of a Southern accent, but I've heard the music of Long Island accent so much, it was very easy for me to return to that and to write to that. And so sometimes I like to go back and do that. But yeah, I think it's a mix, but generally when I'm writing, I don't perform anything out loud. I might, if I get an idea for a scene after I get up, I might have the characters talk to each other in the shower, but but it was just really the quality of your writing felt very musical. So even if you think it's just there for you, we're feeling it too.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah.
I see.
Hi, Julian. Julian had a question. I would love to hear Julian's question. Then.
Okay, Julian, and I just wanted to say hi to my friend Beverly. So Beverly is one of the few Black people who also grew up in Monroe. I can't
Absolutely.
What?
I know who you're talking about. And I got the same thing. So to hear you say it and write about it, oh my God, that was just a moment for me. And honestly, Toni Ann, I didn't think that you went through the same thing that I went through. And to see you write about it, it's amazing. That's Monroe.
I didn't know you went through it because you had siblings.
Yeah, oh, absolutely. I mean,
you know, I can remember being at the Italian festival. You know, my brother James always had a problem with Jimmy Scandora. And Jimmy Scandora liked to call us nigger on a daily basis. And the same thing, when you go home, tell my mom, you know, and my mom is just like your mom, you know, like we should be happy that we're in such a great district, blah, 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 deal with it, you know.
Right.
And until we were at the Italian feast in Monroe and Jimmy Scandora walked past us. Now, mind you, you know, we had just finished marching with Lake Legionnaires. I'm in my uniform, you know, my sister's in her uniform, and we're waiting to get pizza. And Jimmy Scandora walked by and called my mother a nigger. And it was at that moment my mother understood. And it was at that moment my mother gave my brother permission to whoop his ass. And up until that point, we were just supposed to eat it. And it was pointed at her at that point by a school kid, you know, like, and to see you write about it and to talk about it, and it just validates my feelings. So thank you. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Like,
thank you for being here, because I appreciate having my feelings validated too, because as you could tell, my mother doesn't.
No, my mother didn't either. And, you know, my mother grew up in Monroe, you know, in the, you know, she was born in 1937 in the house, you know, in Monroe on Clark Street. And, you know, so she grew up in Monroe in the 40s, just like you and I, the only Black girl in her class, you know, with her siblings and things like that. My grandmother was born, you know, on Clark Street in 1913. And it was like they were oblivious of it. And I just, they couldn't figure out why I was angry, you know? And I just, it was normal for them. It was, you know, that's the only, it was normal for them. Yeah. It wasn't normal for me.
It was normal for me, but I knew that it wasn't healthy or good, but it was normal because that's where, like, I was born there. I didn't live somewhere else and then move there. I was born in Goshen and raised in Monroe. So I never knew, I grew up being called the N-word. So
I was born in Goshen, raised in Monroe, and yeah, to hear, you know, I never knew how to put it into words, like what I went through, you know. I was, you know, I handled it differently than you. You handled it with such grace. I didn't handle it with grace. I was ready to kick your butt, you know.
If I had siblings, Beverly, I would have been willing to do that too. I didn't have any backup. You had big brothers and you had a big...
I never ever would have thought that you would, you know what I mean? Because, I mean, you're Toni Ann Johnson, and to me, that's a huge deal from when we were kids, you know? You were always so kind, and, you know, you were really quite quiet, and now I know why, so it all makes sense to me. Okay. But, you know, I just never thought it was happening to you, because for one, you're a lot lighter than me. I didn't think that they would pick on you, you know? But that just wasn't the case.
They figured it out. Then they did.
They figured it out. Absolutely. They absolutely figured it out. And I'll tell you, I never, ever would have thought in a million years back then that it was happening to you too. You know? Like,
thank you so much. I have to answer some questions because I think we get kicked off like in 15 minutes.
Absolutely.
So I'm going to answer some other
questions.
It was
a pleasure talking to you. Thank you, Toni.
You too. I love you. I'll talk to you later.
I love you.
Bye. So Julian, your question.
Wow, after all that, I have so many more, but I'll
we have 14 minutes now.
First of all, congratulations. And Toni Ann, please know your feelings are valid. You know, I can speak to a lot of the themes I think that are apparent in your book. And, you know, there are millions of people who I think are experiencing that emotional roller coaster. So you are not alone. And I am in that boat as well as many other people of color. So please know that. But I had several, and I think it's so, when you were reading, I felt like this needed to be a play, honestly. I thought it was so very intimate and the characters were so strong. And as you were reading, you're reading, to Kurt's point, you brought so much life to the characters, and I could really see this being adapted to a play. And so I just wanted to encourage you to think about that. I think this would be an excellent stage presentation. And so I encourage you to do that. But lastly, I didn't know, unless I missed something in the beginning, I didn't know that this was somewhat autobiographical. Am I wrong in that? And then
well, it is, but I don't think we did mention it.
Okay.
But yeah, it's very, it's autobiographical.
And then, so you mentioned Velma having some Jamaican roots, and I was just very interested in why you chose that, because she really didn't come off as Jamaican.
Well, she was raised in New York by Jamaican immigrants, and she didn't grow up in Jamaica. She grew up in Harlem.
Gotcha. Okay.
Is that your last question?
Yeah, that's it. I was cutting short.
Thank you so much. I appreciate that. And Brent was next, I think, and then Gregory.
Congratulations, Toni.
Thank you, Brent. Thank you, neighbor.
Job well done. I'm looking forward to reading the book. I wanted to echo the sentiments that was just said. I was visualizing this as I'm driving as like a movie or some sort of screenplay or something. It was very intimate. So good job of making your story graphic.
Okay, thanks. Did you have a question too?
No, that's it. I just want to say,
Okay.
I encourage you to put this in the screen.
Thank you. I'll think about that. Gregory, did you have a question?
Yeah, hey there.
Okay, Gregory.
Hi. So, gosh, I don't know. I'm so moved, and I get that way when you share things from your heart and your expression. And there's different things, you know, the race, the theme of racism, and how that shows up. That was very affecting, obviously, knowing you as long as I have, and being familiar with some of what you've shared over the years of your childhood. The thing that really this time around with this piece that I haven't had a chance to read yet, that got me, was the empathy detour that Velma takes each time you're sharing from your heart, and how she doesn't meet you. And I know, as you've said, that this is autobiographical, largely, and it's just a genuine curiosity on my part as to, when you were playing those scenes, when you were reading those exchanges where you're sharing this really significant loss that you just are still in the process of navigating, and she's making it about her, it was so jarring to my system, like, to hear it. And I
just like to be raised by a narcissist. That's just what it is. It is what it is.
I hear you. So I was just curious, because you obviously lived it to the extent, again, that it's autobiographical. Now you've had the opportunity to chronicle it, to document it. How is it for you as the actor, artist, writer reading now? Because for me, it was so present and real and jarring to my system. How is it for you as the artist who's reading her own work at this time?
You know, reading it publicly now, I'm a little bit distant from it emotionally, because I'm on, but if I read it to myself and I remember conversations, it's a little more painful. It's not as painful in the moment. I can connect with that pain if I feel like it's helpful, but I'm not like like about to break down from how much it hurts. And I'm so used to it. It's, I mean, it's been 50, however many years that I don't admit to, but close to 60 years, of being with somebody like that. And I haven't read The Dad yet. Well, I don't think I'm going to, but The Dad is a piece of work too. I mean, it was not easy. They're difficult people.
Yeah, well, it's just really affecting. And I don't, just as an acknowledgement, I didn't feel in any way that you were judging her or stepping out. Like, it just is very much, this is what it is. And because it's written that way and you read it that way, it's for me very impactful.
I'm also
Congratulations.
amused by her, though. I think she's funny.
I was there were moments where sorry, there were moments I was over here laughing, and then all of a sudden I felt like I got a knife ran through my ribs with how hurtful, you know, remarks that the daughter is making in response. You know, something about it was my experience not was I not devastated enough? Just, you know, it was just, yeah, beautiful.
Thank you. I don't see any more hands, so are there any more questions?
I see Cynthia has a question.
Who's going to ask?
Cynthia, I thought Cynthia had a question. Yeah.
I had my hand up, but it was a brown hand.
Okay.
Background is brown. But just first of all, congratulations, Toni. It's such a beautiful, the first half that I've read is so stunning. Your reading was just so powerful. But one of the things, I mean, you're just a beautiful writer and a visual writer. I mean, everything is so crisp and clear, but also you write emotion in such a wonderful way. I mean, it's visceral. You feel it when you're reading it. And I wanted to ask just, how are you able to sort of harness those emotions and put those on the page? What is your process? And you do it with such clarity. So I just wanted you to discuss that a little bit.
You know, I'm not sure. I think I just do it by feeling through it myself, by sort of trying to understand how the characters feel. And then I just try to figure out how can I execute, you know, showing that, how to show it. So I try to put it, if I can, into what they say, and then sort of into the way they say it, and into what they're doing sometimes, like just their physical movements. I don't actually have a formula for it or know really clearly what my process is. I think I would have to pay closer attention to that when I'm doing it. But I think that I try to feel through it and then execute what I see, what I hear, like all the sensory things. And yeah, I don't know. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, just really beautifully done.
But maybe I should take your class and you can explain to me how I should do it. Because I'm sure you know, I just kind of wing it, I guess.
Anyway, it was beautiful, absolutely beautiful.
Thanks. I think I saw Andrew's hand and then Eric Hetzel.
Yeah, can you guys hear me?
Can you turn it up a little? Hi, Des.
Hi, Toni.
Thanks for reading.
Oh my God, your book came on Saturday and I started reading it and I sat down on my couch and I did not get up until I finished it.
Thank you so much for reading.
Amazing. And when Andrew went to his sister Mary's on Sunday, I made him take the book and have Mary read it. And she's reading it right now and loves it as well.
She's a writer too, a different kind of writer.
Oh my God, just devoured it. It was amazing and so emotional and touching. I just loved it. It's great to see you. You look beautiful. Great
Thank you.
Toni, great performance. I think other people probably have this question. Did your mom... has your mom read this? Has she reacted to it at all, or
no?
Okay.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
I don't think she knows about it. She doesn't use the internet, so I don't think she knows about it.
I figured it out.
I hear something, but I don't know what that was.
I don't either. It was trumpets.
Okay. Maybe that was her. I don't know.
Oh, shit. Oh, my God. Wow. But I love your writing. I love Remedy for a Broken Angel. That should be a movie too, by the way.
Thank you. Can you produce it and finance it for me?
I wish.
Me too.
Eric.
Thank you. Eric, can you unmute, Eric?
There, sorry about that.
That's okay.
That was fantastic. I always like hearing you read, and I've read the book this morning, and I loved it.
Thank you. Thanks for coming.
Thank you. Thank you. Anyway, autobiography and fiction. How do you? I'm writing autobiographical fiction right now, and I struggle a lot with deciding what to write that I know is fundamentally autobiography. Like there are big parts that I know are autobiography, and then there are other places that are fiction, but the emotional truth behind the fiction is still autobiography. And how do you navigate it? And do you have any like principles or like guiding ideas in how you navigate it?
With this piece, I made it different enough that I could still feel like I was writing fiction, so I could still invent things. So in 2006, I was not living in New York. I was not married for 10 years to that person. My mother did not come to save me when I was having a hard time. So things are fictionalized, and when they're fictionalized, it's a little bit easier for me to have some freedom to create, because if I'm like, I think memoir is very creative, but I'm not really trained in how to write memoir, and I didn't want to be limited to exactly what happened, the way it happened, and exactly what people really said. And so I wanted the freedom to play a little bit, and so that's how I do it. So if you're writing autobiographical fiction, you might want to, like, if it works, like condense time, or change where you are, or change people a little bit, change what they look like. So if you're writing about a specific person, maybe give them a different appearance and really create that person. You don't have to stick to, because it's fiction, you don't have to stick to the exact timeline of how things went. So you can condense things, you can move things around a little bit. I feel like for me, it gives me more freedom, but I want to try nonfiction as well and see how that goes. But I just felt a little safer in the space of autobiographical fiction, where I didn't have to be exactly how it happened,
Okay, that's actually all quite reassuring to hear. Thank you.
Okay, good. Kurt, you had another question?
Oh, I just wanted to say I'm sorry for the gentleman's name that had said, who mentioned how painful it was to see that dance that the two characters were doing. First off, I want to say your story and your characters are distinct and original. But I had this strange sort of sense memory, and I was like, oh, where have I felt injured like this before? And I thought back to Harvey Fierstein's Torch Song trilogy, and that character's relationship with his mother, and how there was this seeker and sought relationship that was very a painful dance to watch. But as with your writing, or I should say, as with that writing and your writing alike, there's such a ring of truth. And that's why I think it's painful and funny and sort of harrowing at the same time, because you know that it's this conversation I'm hearing is absolutely informed by something real. This is not something that's just a pure work of fiction. And I just really want to commend you for being able to.
Oh no, you froze. I just wanted to get back to something Julian said. Like, he asked me about the why I chose to reference her being Jamaican, because she didn't really seem Jamaican. So that's a good thing to bring up, because that is actually from the truth, and I could have omitted that detail. And it came up because one of the conversations that my mother and I have had is the conversation that they have. And my mother did keep bringing up that reference to they made fun of Jamaicans. They called us monkey chasers. So that's what she always says when I complain about how I was different and treated different. And so I didn't feel like I could lose that. But Julian's right. Like, there really isn't anything else except for the Jamaican rice and peas mentioned in the meal. There isn't really anything else mentioned that makes her, stand out as Jamaican, but it's just me sort of feeling like, but that's how she was. And so probably, if somebody else might read it and be like, well, you should take that out. But I just didn't. I just kept it, even though it's not adequately threaded through the story as, and more things about her being Jamaican. It's just a detail that I didn't want to lose.
And Toni, and the reason why it stuck out with me also is that, Jamaica's a place, and I know because I was involved with a Jamaican woman for years. There is such a class and race dynamic in Jamaica. So I was wondering if that had something to do with it as well. So that's what I was keying in on, especially the conversation between you and Velma. There was a lot of class and race discussion. So I didn't know whether there were some parallels there or ironies.
Yeah, so her family was, they weren't wealthy, but they weren't poor like some people. Like my grandfather had a college education. So she did feel like they were a higher class than some of the people she was around. And so those distinctions meant something to her. I didn't understand anything about class when I was growing up in Monroe because most people were working class and I didn't really understand the difference. Like there was a kid in my neighborhood whose dad was a cop, and she told me that what her father did was much more important than what my father did, because her father moved around. My father was a psychologist and a psychoanalyst with 2 master's degrees and a PhD, but she told me that her dad was better than my dad because her dad was a cop and he did, more important things than somebody who just sat around and, talked to people. And I was 6 years old, so I was like, oh, I believed her. I didn't know any better. So I didn't understand anything about class. I was just like, these kids, think they're better than me. Maybe, maybe they are. I don't know.
Hi, Toni, it's Pamela.
Hey, Pamela.
I have a comment to make. You certainly engaged me and touched my heart with such a serious topic, but I also wanted to give you kudos for the humor. Such an awesome job balancing that. And one of my favorite lines in the story is put peroxide on it. I was in tears with this mother and the dog.
That dog, my mother had a dog, Pamela, and the dog bit me every time I visited her. And it was never the dog's fault. It was always my fault. And you must have done something to provoke him.
So sad and funny.
The dog died and I was glad, I'm sorry to say. But the dog really did bite me every time I visited. So it was kind of miserable.
Wow, congratulations, love you.
Bye, love you too. Katerina, are we okay on time? It's after 5.
Maybe one last question. What do you guys think? You choose, Toni Ann, whose question to take. Yeah.
Fine. I'll take another question. Did anybody from Monroe want to say anything? Because there's a few people from Monroe. How did you feel?
This is Jane. I'd love to. I can't find my hand. That raise your hand is coming and going.
Okay. It's in the it's in reactions.
Okay, because it's there, then it's not there. But anyway, I love you so much. I'm so privileged to have known you almost my entire life. I'm so proud of you. So let me say that. And just to kind of put some perspective on it for the other people, you were the most sophisticated family in town. So there's also that irony to it. You were the most sophisticated people. You had traveled the world. Your parents had high-level educations. Your mom had this and still has this incredible, expertise and business in antiques. So there's also that to it. And growing up or not being around any Black people, it shaped my perception so much because the only Black people I knew were so much better than us.
You used to always say, why do you guys live in Monroe?
And my mom, I don't know if my mom, your mom was so sweet to my mom and gave my mom a job in her shop when she needed a job. And people would come up to my mom just assuming she was the owner of the shop. That's how crazy and horrible that was.
So that's in another story. Like, and that my mom talks about that a lot. Like, she's had a number of employees, white employees, and people always ask the white employee, like, the questions. They would always like pass over her and ask the white employee their questions, and then they'd have to direct them back to my mother. But yeah, that was funny. But your mom was sophisticated too.
I don't know. She also, there's a certain, I don't know if it's generational, but there was also when I had problems, my mom was a little, you know, boo fucking who. You know, just like pull yourself up by your bootstraps kind of a thing. And I found that horrible. I found it horrible. There was no empathy.
I think, and I don't know enough about your mother, but I think in my parents' case, it was because they had unresolved childhood trauma. And when they don't work out their stuff before they become parents, they can't show up authentically for their kids. They can't emotionally connect with them because they're not really being honest about who they are. So my mother was adopted. I didn't find that out until I was in college. I had no idea that my mother was half white. No clue.
And I found out today that she was part Jewish, which is crazy. I just never knew that.
25% Ashkenazi. I didn't find that out until I did the DNA test, but my mother's father, biological father, was a Russian Jew, but my mother was adopted by a Jamaican couple. Well, the man was Jamaican and her biological mother was Jamaican too, but I was shocked because my mother doesn't look biracial to me. She just looks Black. I feel like I look more biracial than she does, and she's the one who's biracial. So, yeah, but she was abandoned by her own mother, and that was traumatic. And so she was not really being real with me when she was parenting.
And my mom had a lot of childhood trauma as well and abandonment issues as well.
So I think that's what breeds narcissism and emotional immaturity and inability to tolerate the kids' emotional needs. They can't meet your emotional needs. And I think that's part of the reason we bonded so much when we were little kids, because we were basically emotionally on our own as children. You know, we had each other, but they weren't there for us. I'm glad you grew up close by. Love you. Any more questions?
I have one, and that probably, well, the book seems to suggest that Maddie is ready to forgive the racist people who hurt her. Have you actually forgiven the racism you experienced in the town?
You know, that's a great question. And if 2016 hadn't happened, I think I would have remained in a place of forgiveness. And then 2016 happened and a lot of the racism came back. And so I had been at a place where I was easier about it. And I didn't blame those people because I felt like they were just parroting the ideas that the dominant culture had. The country was racist, especially, you know, when I was growing up. And so I didn't necessarily hold it against them specifically. But now I think there's a lot more information to affirm the humanity of Black people and other people of color. There's plenty, like if you were lied to as a child in Monroe and you were told Black people are not, you know, not as good as everybody else, now you don't need to believe that because there's plenty out there to show you that that is false. But people in 2016 and until, you know, it still show that they want to continue to believe that. They want to continue to be racist. They want to continue to support white supremacy. They want to continue to be anti-Semitic. They want to be like that. And no, I don't forgive that. I can't forgive that now. I just kind of have to divorce myself from it and shut it away. But I feel differently. So when I first wrote a draft of this piece, it was before the Trump presidency, and I was in a better place about all that stuff. And then I saw, you know, that things, a lot of those people hadn't really changed. They're the same. They're the same people. So yeah, the kid who called me a nigger every day, I'm sure he's a Trump supporter now. No offense to any Trump supporters if you're on this call, but it's difficult.
Tracy, your question, and that's the last one.
Oh, can you hear me? Okay. Yeah. I guess I don't have a question. I just wanted to show my love and support. But
that's great too.
What's hard for me growing up with you is that, and I'm going to start crying, that people treated you differently. Like I know the examples of the people that you're talking about, and I knew them very well, and they were my friends, and I knew them in different ways. But it makes me sick that I was treated one way and you were treated another way. And I never saw that part. And then you didn't share this with me until like 20 or 30, like 30 years later. It took you so long to tell me these things. You know, I would go and visit you in LA and it was, you would share it and I'd be like, I didn't know you went through this. Because when we were together, we had a great time and we had great experiences. And I look back at high school with you and I had a great experience with you as one of my best friends. But to have that go through this kills me.
Sorry.
So anyway,
well, I appreciate
I'm sorry.
Appreciate the empathy, Trace. Love you. I guess that's it, unless anybody else has any questions.
Congratulations, Toni Ann.
Congratulations, Toni Ann, and thank you.
I'm so grateful to everybody who showed up.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Congratulations. Great job.
Congratulations, Toni. It was wonderful. Thank you.
Beautiful reading.
Thank you, everyone.
It was amazing.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
More acting.
Bye, you guys.
More acting.